Hey guys, this is Rena from Snailworks Crochet, and today I wanted to explore the Red Heart All-in-One Granny Square yarn. This right here. So I know I'm late to the game. It seems like everyone's already made YouTube videos, but kind of reviewing the Granny Square yarn, but I have not seen a lot of videos on the Granny Square Extended Universe. And what do I mean by the Granny Square Extended Universe? I believe the phrase is first coined by creator Manic Changeling over on Instagram, but she created a variety of granny squares that are different to granny square patterns using the yarn. And there's also another creator on YouTube, but she has also created tutorials of how to create alternative patterns using the granny square yarn. So the mission of my video is I'm going to explore all the other potential different granny square patterns using this yarn. And I'm very excited. Let's get started. So it's been like a week since I filmed that introduction and I haven't done any crocheting since then. The first square I'm gonna try is the mitered granny square, mainly because I think it's very similar to the original granny square, at least gauge wise. The pattern kind of like all the Granny Square Extended Universe pieces, it kind of expect you to have the first granny square figured out and then you can iterate on that. So for me, I have very tight tension, so I use a 6.5 millimeter hook and fairly loose tension, and I normally actually, instead of doing the chain 3 slip stitch, I actually do a magic ring with a stacked single crochet, because I saw in Passionate Kelsey's review of the yarn, she does a stacked single crochet, a magic ring, and a stacked single crochet, and it worked just fine. So that's what I'm going to do, and it's been working just fine for me anyway. I've made a decent amount of granny squares with this yarn. I've even made some bags. So I'm like, once you get the rhythm of using this yarn, it's pretty great. So I will be doing that. Once I get that first piece, that first row down, I think I've figured out like how to go from there, like pretty consistently. So, which is nice. That's kind of the secret to using this yarn. Like once you get it, you get it. Those who know who know. I know a lot of people find it kind of frustrating, and that's fine. It's perfectly fine, but I just don't, I don't know. You know, maybe I should have actually, I don't know, looked up the pattern before starting this and filming this. You know, that probably would have helped a little bit. Nice. Okay, nice. Right here. Look at that. And it looks like you just keep continuing this for forever. It looks like with this pattern, I'm gonna have to tighten, I actually have to tighten my tension a little bit, which works for me personally because I have much tighter tension. Like the reason why my gauge, I use such a big hook is because my tension is just so tight normally. The recommended hook size is like 5.5. I'm like a full size up. But yeah, here you go. This is round 3. And that completes my part of the Granny Square Extended Universe, or one of them at least. So, yep. Here I go. A mitered granny square. Hello, back again. So the second square I wanted to try and do as part of the granny square extended universe is the solid granny squares, aka granny square with no holes, kind of. So the start was pretty simple, just a standard, I did a standard magic ring, and you know, for most solid granny square patterns, it's just crocheting in each of the stitches. And like most other solid granny square patterns, you crochet into each of the stitches instead of doing the granny clusters. You do, I think for this variation, you do have to crochet tighter around. And for the corner pieces, instead of 3 double crochets, chain 2 and 3, you do 2 double crochets, chain 2 and 2, which that's pretty standard for the solid granny square, but that's how it differs from the traditional granny square. So I'm going to continue doing, finishing this, and I'll show you the results. Slip stitch into the new one. Okay, that one was painful. That row was painful because I had to tighten my tension significantly to get all these stitches to fit. I think I'm probably gonna have to do the same for the next 2 rows. And yeah, I'll get back to you because I think it's a little boring to just film this entire thing. So I've kind of decided that even though I'm able to make and complete this square, that I kind of hate it and I'm never making this again. So yeah, it's like, yes, can I make it? Yeah. Is it technically easy to make? Also yes. But do I like making it? The answer is no. I actually hate making this. Oh my god. I have to crochet super tight, which, I mean, I crochet tight anyway, but like tighter than normal, and it's hard to match up. And ooh, it's just getting close. I'm gonna have to tighten this up a little bit more. I'm gonna have to tighten this up, like, I'm gonna have to tighten this last part real tight because I'm gonna run out of yarn. And I have to like frog and like redo this again, which I guess is kind of the con of like all the granny square yarns. If, I don't know, I have to like troubleshoot it a gajillion times, which, I mean, I guess I had to do when I first bought the yarn, but I just don't like making this specific one. I kind of give up on this one. This is as far as I'm gonna be able to get it. I had to like go back, unwind this last row, and instead of chaining 1 in between corners, I had to chain, instead of chaining 2 between corners, I had to chain 1, and I had to go super tight. And it's still like, not only is this super warped, it like still isn't perfect. I'm very close on like all the rows though, because on that last row, like I'm technically close on that last row, but because I still need to weave in the end, it's not quite there, and I'm really bothered by this part. But I'm going to call the granny square with no holes a lost cause, and I don't want to look at it anymore. I'm never trying this again. No. So I started granny square multiverse 3 already, which is the eye granny square. This is a lot easier than the solid granny square, ironically enough. The pattern, like, this is kind of warped, but this is what it looks like so far. It's pretty cool looking, honestly. I think it's pretty cool looking. I literally have the last row to go. The pattern is a little bit hard. It's not as easy to do, I guess, mindlessly, and the gauge on it is a little bit trickier because it starts with a ring of single crochets, then half double crochets, then half double crochet increases, and then double crochet increases, and then it has like this, then you start forming the eye essentially. And again, it's really cool, but you have to play around a lot with the tension on this one compared to the solid one. Oh my god, the solid one, I still hate the solid one so much. The solid granny square, you have to go super, super, super tight on this, whereas I feel like with this one in particular, you have to go pretty loose. I actually think because of how this yarn looks, I think it almost looks kind of like a real eye, and I think that's so cool. But yeah, I'm going to finish the last round of this granny square and show you the result. Also, on one of the rows where it says you need to do a chain 4 for a treble crochet, I actually recently learned how to do a stacked treble crochet. I've been doing stacked single crochets in place of double crochets or the chain 3, but I did recently learn how to do a stacked treble, which will replace that triple crochet, which is pretty cool. I'm pretty excited about that. So this one was interesting, but didn't leave a lot of end to weave in, and I tried to tighten it up. It's cool. It's pretty cool. I don't know if I'd make it again, but I can definitely add this to my extended universe. I think just with this color, it doesn't look as cool as the initial video by Manic Changeling, but it's still pretty cool. Like, I don't know how I feel about it, so we'll see. So it is the next day. I took some time to complete 3 more squares of the Granny Square Extended Universe. So I have the triangle, the Granny Square hexagon, and the African flower motif. These 3 were so much easier than the eye and the solid Granny Square. I would say that the easiest one of all of these is the Granny Cluster hexagon, and then after that would be the triangle, and then the African flower motif. For making these, I would say the hexagon I had the easiest time with. If anything, I would say that I kept my attention pretty consistent to how I make the normal all-in-one granny square. And then second was the triangle. In the initial video, Manic Changeling did like a front post treble on some of these to use up some of the extra yarn, but I didn't find myself needing to do that. I thought doing a standard double crochet was perfectly fine. And then this one was kind of a struggle because on the petals right here, the initial instruction says 7 double crochets. I did 6 because that's what fit, but then there was this outline part, which was kind of dependent on you doing 7, so I had to kind of modify the pattern to adjust. I mean, it's nice, but it's not my favorite. I also think that a lot of the granny squares that I've been making look kind of boring, but I think a lot of it has to do with the colors I am using. At least with this color, a lot of the funky looking granny squares look kind of boring, whereas I think if I had brighter colors or colors that just popped more or had more contrast, they would look a lot cooler. For example, like this color scheme just happens to be almost satin beige, or millennial gray almost. So I don't think these fun patterns work with this color lot in particular. The eye motif is a good example of that, because that
motif in Manic Changeling's video looks so cool. But when I did it, I mean, it worked, but it didn't look nearly as cool as hers. Hey guys, it's the next day. So I finished the Sunburst Granny Square. I used a different tutorial as reference for this one. And so, but looking through that other lady's tutorials, I saw she had one more square, which was a 3D flower using the Granny Square yarn. And I want to try making that one. And then there was also another video done by, I think her name is the CATT lady. She did a version of the African daisy, but in a square. So essentially, I would basically be taking this, but making it a square. So this motif, but square. So I kind of want to try those two, and then afterwards, then I will compare and contrast all the different granny squares that I made with this yarn. So I realize I don't have a lot of footage of me actually crocheting or making these granny squares, so I should probably add that now while I still have these two granny squares, because I didn't think it was kind of, I guess I'm gonna have to experiment with like how I want to do these videos, because sometimes I feel like a lot of it's just kind of wasting time. Also, I'm using my phone, so it's kind of a pain, but also I know it's nice to have when it's there. I'll figure it out. But I'm starting on the African daisy square, granny square, and how it differs from the hexagon is that the hexagon has 6 petals, whereas the square has 8 petals. And because the square has 8 petals, I have to size down my hook to a 5. I did this first round with the 6.5, which is my normal size hook for the granny square. But this second row I had to size down to a 5 because I had to go super tight. And I think I might have to do that for the rest of these rows too. Honestly, this is actually the first square I've actually had to change my hook for. I've just been able to make it work with some of the others. Honestly, I'm kind of shocked that I didn't switch my hook until now for most of these, because especially that solid granny square, I should have gone down at least a half hook size for that one. But everything else I've managed to just keep the same hook size. And I think that's hilarious, actually. It's like, I think it's skill, and just, you know, undoing and redoing a bunch of things. But yeah, this one, I couldn't get away with it. So I finally decided to actually just change hook size. And it's not perfect, but look, I just wanted to, this is part of the challenge of me making every single known granny square with this all-in-one yarn. In an ideal world, I would try and do another new granny square with this yarn, but I don't have the skill, honestly. Like genuinely, I just don't have the skill. I started crocheting like 6 months ago, so we'll see. But I'm going to finish this and see if, and I'm watching this YouTube tutorial as I do it, so that's why I have my over-the-head headphones on. It looks like she switches hooks on this, which I don't, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't want to do that if possible, because I mean, yes, it's probably cleaner and easier to work with if you switch hooks in between, but it's, I don't know, for me I feel like it kind of defeats the purpose of this yarn if you keep like switching hooks over and over, which, I mean, that's kind of the criticism. I mean, I guess it's a criticism a lot of people have of this yarn in the first place, is that you have to play around with your tension and like the hook size and all that. So, who knows? So, I completed the square version of the African daisy. I think I'll block these because this is looking very warped right now, and some of the others are looking pretty warped too. But yeah, yeah, this was kind of annoying to make, not gonna lie. Like, I don't really like the hexagon pattern either, but I don't know if I like this more or less than the other one. I'd argue I think the hexagon pattern is easier with this yarn than this one, but I think I like the look of this better than the hexagon. I will say this is the first one where I've had to change hook sizes and stuff, so that was fun. I ended up, the last two colors, I ended up using my standard hook size that I've been using for the granny squares. But yeah, I mean, I have this giant tail because it had me half double crochet around the edge. Yeah. The easiest granny square to make would be this mitered granny square. You can keep a consistent tension through all of your rows, and it didn't require too much undoing and redoing. It was pretty consistent because this middle part here, in my opinion, was the hardest, and that's the same with the standard granny square pattern. The second easiest to maintain tension would be this hexagon granny square. I had no issues maintaining my tension, or I didn't have to change anything. I didn't have to undo too many rows. The third granny square that was easiest to maintain was this triangle right here. There was a couple of instances where I might have had to loosen up my tension, but other than that, it was pretty simple to do, comparatively. Now, all the other squares were a lot more difficult to do and required a lot more focus and undoing and redoing. The easiest of the most challenging granny squares was probably the starburst granny square. The pattern was easy enough to follow, but it took a couple of tries to get all these aspects down correctly. The next one I would say that's challenging but also too simple was this eye granny square. The pattern itself for me was challenging because I had never made this type of granny square before, but maintaining the tension and keeping the color changes consistent was not as difficult as I initially thought it would be. The next most challenging was actually this 3D flower by RepeatCrafterMe. It took a little bit of time for me to figure out where to start my magic ring and what my tension should be for these petals, but overall the actual pattern itself is very easy, and it's a lot more compact than I expected it to be. I didn't have issues with running out of yarn, though I did have to undo and redo a couple of rows again. This one was the hardest for me. As you can see, I struggled to even get my tension right, because even though the pattern itself is easy, the middle part, the beginning part was easy, but as I got further and further up the rows, it became harder and harder to maintain my tension because I would always just keep running out of yarn. I should have actually gone down a hook size, but I was too stubborn to do so, and therefore now I have this tail here. Honestly, the last three right here, I kind of ranked them all in the same category of difficulty, because they were all very difficult to maintain tension. So the African daisy hexagon is the easiest of them, but it was still very difficult to maintain tension, and I actually had to modify the pattern for it to fit, and I don't like that. This other 3D flower hexagon was also very difficult for me to do. I would say it's easier and it works, but it's kind of warped, and I also just had to make up my own thing as well, which I would say this is not beginner friendly. And then this one, which is the African daisy but turned into a square, this one was honestly the most difficult because one, it's super warped right now and I'd have to block it. Two, I actually had to change my hook size multiple times. So I went from like this middle part, I started with a 6.5. That was easy. Then all of these, like these next two colors, I had to change down to a 5mm hook compared to my 6.5 that I normally use for this yarn. I had to go super tight. It was not friendly at all. I think I did eventually go up a hook size again for the last 2 rows, but honestly, it was, you're free to try this pattern if you want, but I found it the most difficult of the Granny Square Extended Universe. And so, with that concludes my video on the Granny Square Extended Universe. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye!